I love it. I really do love
Muffins
it.
without you. Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Daily Huddle. Today is Tuesday before Thanksgiving in 2024. I think it's November 26th. Yes, it is. And I am here flying solo, as they say. My co-host, Catherine Sable, is with her family. But today, we're going to get into a juicy conversation. Every Tuesday is devoted to relationships and communication. And that is what I am very, very passionate about, which is why I co-host. But today we're going to dig into a little bit around how we behave during the holidays. But the holidays are only a small part of how we conduct our lives. So we're going to take a close look at how we conduct ourselves around the holidays. And we're going to see if we can have that affect our relationships every day, not just during the holidays. So the question for today is, what will you stuff into your holidays? And I want to tell you about my holidays when I was a little girl. My mom, I can remember every Thanksgiving and every Christmas, my mom would work herself to a frazzle preparing. She would bake and bake and bake for weeks. So we had all these goodies. And at Thanksgiving in particular, I definitely remember her getting out all the crystal, all the china, polishing silver, making sure the entire house was clean. She would spend all day on her feet in the kitchen trying to make everything perfect. And then we would all sit down at Thanksgiving. Someone would say a prayer, and my mom would gobble the food up. She was a fast eater in a matter of, I don't know, 10 minutes. And then you know what it was time to do? Time to clean up. And that was our Thanksgiving holiday. And what I remember about that is, yes, the food was delicious. But what I really remember is that I never saw my mom smile through it. I just remember her being tired and working so hard. And then she would sit down at the table and she would say something like, oh, the turkey's a little dry, or the gravy didn't have enough salt. And so do you think that I carried on that tradition as a mother? Well, kind of. That's the answer. I kind of did. Every Thanksgiving, I pull out the china, I pull out the crystal, I spend all day in the kitchen preparing food. But one thing that I do definitely differently is I sit down with a big fat smile on my face and I enjoy the family and I enjoy the meal. And then we clean up together. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you what, I still don't think I'm doing it right because it is so much work. And unlike when I was growing up, this year we have 21 people coming to Thanksgiving. Now, a lot of people are bringing food, thank goodness, but they're still getting the tables and the linens and the crystal and the china and the candles and the centerpiece and the food and making sure there's room. I mean, the list goes on. But as much as I've been devoted to human connection and the study of it, I decided to do something different this year. And do you know what I did? My husband and I purchased plastic, recyclable linens, silverware, plates, and cups. And we did that so that we could rinse it off with a hose, throw it in the recycling, and spend the evening with our loved ones. So I'm not going to work like I have year after year after year. And the reason that I share this is because it's not only about Thanksgiving and it's not only about holidays that we're working in place of human connection. There are so many reasons why we might work hard rather than sit down and savor the moment. And I'm going to share one more example of that. And then I want to talk about you and how we can deepen our connections, which to me are the most precious gift on this earth. How we might deepen our connections, not just through the holidays, but in everyday life. So I want to take us back to, let's see, it had to have been 2000 and I don't know, maybe 2005. No, probably 2007. We'll say 2007. I remember that my youngest daughter was 16 years old. And during Christmas of that year, I decided that I was taking her middle sister, who was suffering from epilepsy, to Hawaii to put her on a very special diet. So my 16-year-old was heartbroken. She did not want me to be gone for Christmas. And so I promised her a special birthday gift. And the special birthday gift was that I took her to New York, just the two of us, right after the Christmas holidays. So we spent January, cold, cold, walking around New York, enjoying each other. And it was just the two of us. And at the beginning of the trip, I remember this. We said, you know what? We want to go see the site where the World Trade Center was. And so we put on our gloves, and gloved hand, we walked very, very quickly to the site of the Twin Towers. We saw those massive fences, which is how it was back then before it was built into the beautiful monument that it is today. We saw the massive fences, and we had to kind of step up, and we held hands, and we looked down into the giant abyss where the two Twin Towers used to be. And without saying a word, each of us took off one glove. We let go of our hands, took off one glove, and clasped our bare hands back together. And we just stood there and we stared into this pit. And after a few minutes, my daughter looked over at me and she looked back into the pit in the earth and she said, somebody's mom was sitting at her desk talking on the phone with her daughter. And in a minute, she was gone. And as we walked away, Holly asked me this. She said, Mom, what would you do if you knew it was your last life minutes? And I stopped in the New York traffic and grabbed her little teary face and I kissed her on the cheek and I said, this, Holly, this is what I would do with you or your brother or your sister, spend time with you if I knew it were my last life minutes. But none of us know when our last life minutes are coming. So we rush through. We work hard, we fill our plates, we stuff too many tasks into making perfect holidays and perfect moments and perfect work, and we're missing opportunities to simply connect. We are biologically designed not just to be around people, but to connect on an intimate level. And for some of us, that has become very, very foreign. I can remember years ago when the kids were little, saying to them, now think what this does to the mind. When I get finished cleaning, then I'll play a game with you. When I get finished working on my proposal, then I'll sit down with you. When I finish this, then I will come to you. That sends the message to young children, you're not top priority. You come after these things that I have to do. Then comes the relationship. And so I wonder what we might do if we flipped that equation upside down and we made the connection and the conversation and the relationships the absolute priority. We did that first. We played on the floor with our child first. We sat hand in hand on the front porch with our husband first, and then we did the proposal, and then we cleaned up the dishes. What might that say to the people that we love? I've been studying a person by the name of Dr. Jamil Zaki, and he is a social science professor at Stanford, social neuroscience. So right up my alley, right? And he talks about something, and this is where I want to give us something kind of that's actionable to take away today. If this feels like, wow, that does sound good, am I really, really putting my heart and my time and my effort into my relationships, or am I just being happy that I have people around me? He talks about something called social savoring, and I think this is a really cool concept. So I'd like to share it with you and give you some examples of how we might slightly shift our conversations and elevate our relationships, which elevates our physiological capacity for joy. And he talks about something called social savoring, and I love this. He says, rather than talking about what we're grateful for, which is very, very common at Thanksgiving, right? I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for a warm home. I'm thankful for my great spouse, et cetera, et cetera. He says the focus would be more on what we are appreciating in the moment. So I want to expand on that a minute because it sounds a little bit kind of woo-woo. The way he explains it is he says, appreciating good things while they are happening. And he teaches this even to his young children by not just going to get an ice cream cone and talking while you're eating the ice cream, but talking about what you're enjoying about the ice cream. Or, and this really applies to my daughter, Caroline. She loves a sunset, to sit and talk about the sunset, nothing else. No technology in her hands, no snacking, nothing else, just sitting and truly taking in the sunset. We can apply this same practice to our conversations. But this is where I think sometimes it might get a little bit uncomfortable for folks. But we can social savor in conversations. And what that means is to take a very curious, interested attitude toward the person that we're talking to. So not just talking on the surface about things. And I have some tips for this, and these tips partly apply to myself. And I'll tell you why that is. If people talk about golf, football, the weather, those are things that kind of tend to shut me down because they don't interest me. We all tend to talk about the weather, but a lot of people will talk, in my world, they'll talk about football and they'll talk about golf. And those things simply don't interest me. So I could just fold my arms and say, this does not apply to me. But let's take social savoring into a conversation just as generic as golf, okay? If two folks are talking about their golf game, again, I could shut down, or I could take the question to make it a social savoring moment and ask a question, something like, what is it about golf that you love so much? Then all of a sudden that turns a conversation into from what to why, and that builds connection. So there's a little bit of that lesson in this social savoring. When we take the conversation from what we did and why we do it, that builds connection. I'll give you an example from just yesterday when I did this. And it's become kind of a practice for me, so I'm not as aware of it. But when I think about it, I do it a lot. I was talking to a gentleman who has traveled a lot he was a director of supply chain, and he traveled all over the world, and he was talking about his work, and he kept talking about the different places he would go. And I don't know too much about the world of supply chain, but I was intrigued by the travel. And I asked him, I said, I'm going to ask you a question. If you were going to go on vacation and you could only go back to one place out of everywhere that you've been all over the world, where would you go? And without hesitation, this man said Bruges, Belgium. I was like, wow. I thought I was going to hear Paris or Morocco or something and he said Bruges, Belgium. And of course, I asked him why that was. And he proceeded to tell me the most beautiful story about a friend that he had made there and why it made him love Bruges, Belgium. And now this gentleman that I did not know very well, he and I will always have that connection. I went home. I told my husband the story. I told him we should think about going there next time we go to Germany. We have a connection that we can build on. That's an example of social savoring. When we stop to appreciate what's going on in the moment, we stop thinking about what. We have a great tendency to say to people, tell me about your kids, tell me about your work, and people tell the facts, and then we move on. But when we stop to ask the person how these experiences are affecting them, that builds connection. And I don't know about y'all, but to me, that is so much more savory than turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing. Certainly, I'm excited about the food over the holidays, but I am going to slow down and make sure that I'm taking time to connect with people. Even if I think, well, they're talking about something I'm not interested in, I'm going to stop and ask for a story about why they are passionate about that. And that builds connection because passion is universal. So I'm wondering if you all have any thoughts about how you conduct yourselves over the holidays or in relationships, and how we might be able to add this practice of social savoring as opposed to stuffing too much work into our holidays, really, and into our lives. Good morning, Chase. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here on this holiday week.
Wow. I think this may be one of my favorite presentations you've ever done. And I love all your presentations. But this particular one, I got a little tingly in my chest when you were talking. That's how I know it affected me. And what I want to say is this: it's a very interesting thing how some people almost get violent when you're talking to them and you want them to be in the present. It's a very hard thing for most people to do. And
Yes.
I talk to people all the time and I say, but we're here right now. We're
Mhm.
right here. Whatever happened an hour ago cannot be fixed. That we're right here. And sometimes I had this conversation the other day with someone. They were talking to me about something that they didn't like. And I said, how can we move forward? And they're like, Chase, you're always so good at that. I'm not good at that. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm with you. I'm your friend. What can we do right now to make this better? Let's go forward. And it
Mm.
was so hard for them to, be in that space. And I remember once I was at a gig and I walked into a room and it was this incredible place called the Park Armory. And it was this cavernous building. And I was there with this multi-million-dollar wedding from this family that bought this place out. And I remember walking into the cocktail area and looking up, and there were trees in reverse. So the trunks were on the ceiling, and the actual part of the tree where the leaves are were pointing down. It was so beautiful. And it had lights on, and it was misty and soft and yellow. And I remember looking up and going, this is incredible. And I was just there, like lost in the moment. And a guy came up to me and said, Chase, what's up? How are you? I said, good, man. Just getting some cocktail food, just gearing up for the gig. Look at this room. It's freaking amazing. Look at this. And he goes, yeah, man, I don't even see the room anymore when I come to the gig. But
Oh,
but good on you, man. You're a cool guy. I'll see you inside. And he just walked away. And I was like, he just said, I don't even see the room when I come to the gig. And I thought, like you said, what an amazing amount of information in the present to miss that most people do, right? If you
hmm.
just open, well, I'm in New York City, so it's like freaking overload. If you just stop in any place, anywhere, and just move your body 360 degrees, you can get information that I just think it makes you happy and makes you present and makes you thankful for the moment. But I revel in that. And I love this topic. It made me tingly. It made me emotional. It made me feel like, yes, that's what I'm saying. I want to hear more of that. Yes. Like, you know what I mean? That's so real. And we do that all the time in the huddle. So I love you. And thank you so much for your
Oh,
presentation. It's really
thank
great.
you so much for saying that. You really hit on something that I talk about, but we can't dismiss is that people, and I am included in this unless I'm very focused on it. So I'll definitely include myself. We are not comfortable being fully present. We're just not because we have been trained, our brains have been trained to be overstimulated at all times. And that helps us to avoid perhaps thinking about things we don't want to think about. As a matter of fact, I used to think, well, I like to be by myself. I love time alone. And I think sometimes the reason why I like that is because I can study, I can read, I can work out, and I don't have to have those moments that feel a little bit like boredom and then thoughts that I don't want to face seep in. And that is part of getting stronger and being more connected to people is having those moments where we let those thoughts in and not fight them off. It's kind of one of the themes of my book. So I'm
True.
glad you brought that up.
Very, very
Um,
true.
Giovanni, what's on your mind this morning?
Yeah, thank you, Tara. Yeah, thank you, Chase. I can't even see the room anymore. That got me thinking. Well, it got me thinking, like, what is it that I can't even see anymore? I certainly see, Tara. Um, I definitely find myself in this conversation thinking, I'm wondering what is it that I'm not seeing anymore? That it is extraordinary, but I've made it ordinary. And that's what this conversation is triggering for me, in the context of the holidays. I know I'm going to be with family, and I was thinking it's very likely before this conversation, it was very likely that I wasn't going to see it. I wasn't going to see the plays, the stage anymore. Very likely I was going to go through the motions of, hi, how are you? Great to see you, going through the motions and appreciating the food and appreciating the company. But there is an aspect of this conversation that takes it a little bit farther, that social grief, no, savoring, social savoring.
Mm-hmm.
There's an aspect of this conversation that allows me to ask, well, anything that's coming up, whether if it's something I don't really care about or whether it's something I really care about, to ask a little bit more about what they're saying in that moment, rather than creating a new conversation like, what's your favorite weather?
Yeah.
In that, what's your favorite holiday? Rather than that, like in that very moment, looking to say or create something from what that person is saying. And in a context of gratitude, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And it leaves me thinking, well, it leaves me thinking what's possible. And I certainly felt related in the context of my children. I am that person who says to my daughter, when I'm done with this, when I finish this, when I'm done with this. And that's a cold shower for me to piled up right now, all those moments where I say, let me do that later. Let me do it when I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a justification, just an explanation. It's just that she takes over. Okay. She takes over.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stopping from that moment forward. It's all
Yeah.
her. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. So so anyway, that's what I was present. That's what I wanted to make a comment. Thank you for creating
Thank
this conversation.
you. Thank you so much. That it feels very counterintuitive, I think, to say, well, I'm going to enjoy first and then go do the work, because we're taught, get your work done and then you can play, right? So it feels right that we would first clean up, first do the proposal, do the work, and then sit down and enjoy. So what I've learned to do is not really have a timer, but I'll say to Caroline, we're going to play Rummy Cube. It's her favorite game, even though she can't remember the name of it. We're going to play Rummy Cube for 30 minutes. And at the end of the 30 minutes, then I'm going to get up and I'm going to do whatever it is I have to do, or whatever the time is, so that, because it could go on and then you're too tired and you really would regret that moment. But what happens when I do that, when I'm really on my game and I say to someone that I love, I'm going to do this with you first. I'm going to sit down on the phone and talk to Wilson and do nothing else for the next 20 minutes. It gives me some really powerful energy. As a matter of fact, during the storm, we had no power for 9 days. It was stressful on so many levels. And I texted my best friend, Kathleen, and she said, what did you do today? And I said, only one thing. And she said, what was that? And I said, I was a good mom today. And in that, that was all that mattered. Like, as hard as it was, and we didn't have electricity, and the list goes on, I just decided that I was going to push all my work aside and just be for Caroline that day. And do you know what? I felt so good about that. It gave me this great energy to attack my work and attack the cleaning and attack the cooking with a new energy, because I felt really good about how I'm conducting my how I'm interacting with my treasured relationships. So, yeah. If anybody else has
Thank you.
any, I have loved this conversation, Chase and Giovanni. Thank you so much for chiming in. If anyone else has any comments or questions, I'm here. If not, we might just finish this out a couple minutes early, but I do want to review the learning a little bit. And two things. Yes, gratitude is important, but remember to
Sarah,
say,
I think Kurt was going to say something. He got
oh,
himself off
cool.
mute.
Okay. Yes, let me
He
hear it,
didn't
Kurt.
raise his hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't see that. Go for it.
That's all right. You seemed like you're going to be on a roll, so I was going to let you go. But Giovanni,
Is he cutting out for y'all?
Yeah, he froze.
You froze, man. I wonder if
You
you go off.
froze, man.
I'm going to review the learning, and then we're going to go back to Kurt, I hope. That's a bummer.
Are we
So
better?
are you
Yeah,
there?
we're better.
Okay, try
All right.
again.
All right. So what I was saying is, Giovanni, thank you for being present in the moment. And, in past daily huddles, we spoke to listening, and I think that's part of it too. I'm involved in suicide prevention, and the idea is, we're at a time right now, we're in what they call the holiday spike, which is, more earmarked for December. But you just never know what somebody is dealing with when you're trying to get together for a Thanksgiving holiday or whatever, and really check in and allow them to express, how they're doing and what's on their mind, and to look at group dynamics. Because when you're with family and whatever, you have different members of the family that are a little bit more exuberant, or like Giovanni was saying, takes over the moment. It's
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
so to kind of be mindful and to look at the people in the room and to find out who maybe is the one sitting there being really good to listen, and then to be able to find that connection to that person and to say, hey, how are you doing? What's on your mind? And to really help make sure there's a balance in the room, and that everybody is equally accessing and contributing and fueling the energy in the room. And you never know if there's something going on where maybe somebody wants to go to a different corner in the room and share something that you typically wouldn't want to share in such a festive occasion, or maybe an offer to say, let's just have fun now. And how about I give you a call tomorrow? Because just being in this space of mental health and social services and, suicide prevention and so forth, it's just real. There's people all around us masking what's really going on. So maybe being that agent of love, and to being open and ready that it really could be that somebody needs you.
Mm.
That
Thank you so much for that reminder. As we all know, depression and anxiety are at just epidemic levels in our country, and they just continue to get worse. And just because someone's surrounded by people does not mean that they're not lonely, that they don't need someone to listen. So I love that reminder. When some people love that energy of like a lot of people, but it's important to take time and not worry about the other conversations that are going on around you, and just be fully there for the person that you're actually speaking with in the moment. You never know when you can make a big difference. And thank you so much for that reminder, Kurt. Yeah,
You're welcome. Thank you.
absolutely. So I hope everybody has their own takeaways, but the big one for me is, while we're going to practice gratitude over the next week, let's also remember to savor the moments, to approach every conversation with a sense of curiosity and an attempt to learn not only what the person does, what they did last week, but why they do it, why they enjoy what they enjoy. And that builds connection. And that, to me, is a better way to experience this life together. So I thank you all for being here. I hope you do enjoy this holiday. And I hope you're surrounded by people that you love. And if you're not, and I mean this all sincerely, my husband and I both say it, you have a seat at our table. Send me a message. And if you can get here, we welcome anyone to our table during this time of year, and we would love to have you. So I'm going to close us out with our tenets. And the first of those is always the most important, which is love. If we just lead with love, I think everything else seems to fall in place. Also, remember to give. Give of your heart, give of your space, your time, your energy. Remember to take time to not take life too seriously. So that means to laugh, throw your head back, and let those endorphins fly. And help your body to reduce stress by getting more sleep, eating more plants, and getting up off that booty and moving that body. Thank you all so much for being here on the Daily Huddle. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you all so much for being here.